And I'm finding that, and that's how I came to these tools. I'm finding that engineers, scientists really kind of get a little uncomfortable with some of the tools that we have, and maybe the whole idea of self-organizing, if you're used to planning and controlling, can drive people crazy. So anyway, I'll talk a little bit about some of these activities, the why and how. Okay. So for starters, I know a couple of you guys, but for the agenda, we'll do a little bit of a round robin. I'll describe that. I'll go over the sort of the project in general and pull out a few of the elements that matter for us as in group work, and then in the workshop, I would actually cover, we do an activity with a couple of the activities. We would actually do it interactively. I haven't learned how to do it interactively virtually, so we won't do that today. I'll just go over it. Consensus brainstorm, knowledge cafe, and then the retrospective. So for starters, let's do a round robin, and we thought we could do this in the chat box. If you could just, think about, just introduce yourself as a way to talk, and then when you think of your projects, what word pops into your head. Just think, I'll give you maybe 15 seconds, but just throw those out there, and David will kind of look at them, but it'll be interesting.
Yes, let's see how this goes. Popcorn mode.
Popcorn.
Okay, we have Suzanne who says fun pops into her head. Overwhelmed. Focus and fun. Chaos. Organization. Design pops into Dawn's head. A word emergent with Mary. Structured with Rita. Team with Celeste. Hi, Kevin. Policy and science from Kevin. More contributions from Celeste. Contributions from Celeste again. Okay, great. What else have we got? Are we done? Any more ideas?
Y'all can keep
Irene, organized chaos. Time. Empathy. Oh, popcorn mode. I like this. Jason Miles, Alicia made me attend. So I think so.
He's our new city engineer.
Okay. Welcome, Jason. You're very welcome. Okay.
Let's make Jason. No, we can't make him do anything.
No.
Anyway.
Yes. Okay, I think we've got everything there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Thanks, everybody.
So I think I have to cursor here. All right. So when we're thinking about our projects, the word that pops into my head, as some of you guys, was complex. If you look at our projects and what we often get, for me, it looks like this, like this pile of I guess it's kelp, in the Pacific Northwest. And the way we think about projects is there's a beginning and there's an end. Well, this is how a lot of times our complex projects look, right? It's like you don't know where to start with the beginning and what does the end really look like. And so for me, I love this picture because and this was, I took it probably 15 years ago when I was in the middle of a real intense planning, permitting project that a bunch of engineers were trying to do with scientists, with planners, and we just didn't have the skills, and I definitely didn't have the skills to help the team. So that's when my journey started, and in facilitation really was trying to help this group bring this project together. So let me, okay. It's a little bit hard for me to look at you guys. I'm just going to look at this. Can y'all see me? And do I look funny or am I looking okay? Yeah, I should be looking okay at the camera.
You're looking great.
Okay, thank you, Celeste. All right, so so this example and what I'm going to talk about is the project, the South Florida Water Sustainability and Climate Project, and it was a $5 million. It went past 5 years, National Science Foundation funded project, and had a really large extent. So if you see here is United States, the red box is Florida, and then this was the area of Florida that we were interested in, or that the study was in. It went from the Lake Okeechobee outfalls, this big lake here, and down to the Everglades National Park. So you can imagine, the variety of different issues, variety of people had to become involved. When I put this together, I was thinking, normally we say, that we're herding cats. And I thought, okay, well, in this case, I'm herding geniuses, and geniuses across the United States, from Florida all the way to Hawaii. And we had 14 institutions, universities primarily, 21 principal investigators, and 5 collaborators. And collaborators included USGS, United States Geological Survey, the South Florida Water Management District, and others. So it was a big group. Now, I created this graph, and I think after today, with some of my work, my current work, I'm going to add one more bubble. I'm going to call it commitment, level of commitment. But these are some of the challenges, right? When you have, well, actually, these are features of a large project like this that create challenges, enormous challenges sometimes. So you've got a high diversity of membership. You've got a lot of different scientists, engineers, planners, technicians, students, researchers, all pulling together to try to understand what each other's doing. That's that deep knowledge, understand where their work fits into other people's work. This large size in and of itself creates challenges. And then there's often, just goals, and we've all experienced that, where you start out with a vision or a mission, but somewhere along the line, maybe those goals get misaligned. And particularly with the research projects, I found there was this permeable boundary. So you had people coming and going. You've got this principal investigator who might stay, but then you have also graduate students who graduate. You've got postdoctorals who get a better job, undergrad students, and that sort of thing. And so all of these features can create enormous challenges for any project, not just research projects. And so what do you do about it? There are a lot of different, so I guess what I want to say is there are needs to overcome these challenges. So, and there are ways we have to think about that, which is, this isn't tied to none of these are really tied to any single challenge or feature, but these are, how do you foster effective communication? How do you learn and appreciate where those dependencies are across these tasks or work groups? And how do you get this knowledge integrated across the project? And just how do you get work done? How do you coordinate it? How do people feed their knowledge into what other people know, or what they need to know? And then, if it gets off track, it's like a big battleship. How do you realign this big battleship? And then when you've got people coming and going, maybe you lose a key person. How do you ensure there's quality in the end? And with everybody spread out, and I think we've all experienced that with these days with COVID over the past year, but this geographic dispersion, how do you continue to build that cohesion I think having what you guys are doing, what we're doing here, having pictures, we can see each other, that helps enormously. Still not the same as being right there, but it helps. So when I first started with this group, they really what happened, I was pulled in as a facilitator. I was not the project manager, but I was facilitating these strategic planning sessions. And we had one a year, we had some in the middle. I was continuing to do smaller meetings throughout the year. But the activities that I'm share with you, it really is focused on what I brought into these strategic planning sessions. So the first year, when I explained what I was going to do, they, okay, you can have the last 2 hours of the last day. Well, they were scared. And the reason, and then I realized why they did that. This is how they prefer to operate. Big table, laptops, hardly anybody's really paying attention to what the person's saying because they're actually thinking about what they're going to say next, the standard stuff that we get into. And my goal was to get this, everybody conversing, having dialogue, really paying attention to each other. And when I first started, I actually scoured the literature trying to find something. I thought surely, in Agile, in engineering, we're starting to see a lot of really good tools. And we already had Agile. I was applying them to my engineering work, related work. Surely, National Science Foundation had something. But the reality was they were just in their infancy of recognizing that there's something more, and we needed more. And so about the time I started working with this group, National Science Foundation, the National Institute of Health primarily also was developing material. And so we kind of grew along, but I think industry was way ahead, and I kept, so I kept referring back to our favorite books. And this is just a sampling, but Margaret Wheatley and Technology of Participation, which is what I use a lot. And if you're familiar with these, you'll see these in the activities that I use, and I've adapted for scientists and engineers. World Cafe, Open Space. I'm so enamored of open space that I actually called Harrison Owen and I said, "Can I come meet you?" And as soon as I met him, he said, "All right, what do you want from me?" So tell me everything you know. And he spent about 4 hours with me. It was really wonderful. And then Agile retrospectives. I worked with Diana Larson in Portland, Oregon, and she just became an incredible mentor to me. So anyway, my resources came from these. And in explaining, so if most of us here are facilitators, we know this, but I'll just repeat it. So really, the power of providing self-organizing activities is really, it's a recognition that we don't have central control over behavior of people, and that relationships are the thing that matters. And then if we generate simple rules as opposed to detailed process, detailed plans, for 5 years, really it becomes more purposeful. We can generate this creative outcome that we're really interested in. So using those foundational concepts, and then these activities that are based on that are going to result in I don't know if the word is maybe attributes or something, or results that will help us achieve, overcome those challenges that I was just talking about. Keeping it visible, making it transparent, what everybody's doing, empowering everyone to contribute, because you never know where your best idea is going to come from, encouraging and supporting collaboration and communication. And then this continuous learning, it goes back to retrospectives, just continually learning and you know, I don't want to use improving, but just continuous learning is so important. And all of this builds trust, which is really, really the main thing. So for me and my approach, I took this progressive approach to try to help build this trust and confidence. You know, remember that first picture where they're sitting around the boardroom with all the laptops. They had to, I felt like I needed to help them build trust in the activities, in me, in themselves, to be able to even use this and get what they needed to get out of the work. So I started with one that works really well with engineers, and I suspected it would work with scientists because the brains, they're not just alike, you know, nobody's is, but there was this, if you think about the 1-2 table all, it's a adaptation of the top consensus workshop. I use that as a foundational activity, and I keep it real simple, and then I progressively add, and then, you know, maybe add a little bit more that alone, and if I had used it first, might not have went over so well. And then retrospectives after each meeting. And then for me, I have to keep it fun and energizing, else, and for everybody else, really. So I don't want to be one of those people who just talks on and on and on. And David and I talked about how do we, you know, we're going to take meetings. And so I'm thinking, do we have any questions that you want to ask right now before I keep going, or thoughts that you want to share? And David, I'll let you kind of manage this.
Yeah. So if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate. I find that I see Jan has joined us and he has his hand up. Has he? Hi, Jan. Or that's just a permanent hand. So if you have a question, just wave like crazy, because I see that the real waving hands quicker than I see the small yellow hands. I think Jan has Jan is gone. No, he hasn't. He's moved. Do you have a question, Jan? No. Okay. No questions for the moment, Alicia. I have no questions myself. Celeste, do you have any questions, maybe?
I'm just curious to see, as you say that you used so many approaches, such as the TOP and the World Cafe and all those. How did you use those, and what made you choose one instead of the other one? And how did people react to that?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Yeah, then that's what I'm hoping I'm going to convey. And if I don't, then ask again, you know, throughout. And this table might help. So just for this project, this is the activity, the team meetings, and I had a real specific reason for using the different activities. So consensus brainstorm, top, I adapted that from top. I use that because I really wanted to help the team understand. I call it I call it a product, but really it was building a roadmap, this high level roadmap showing, it was a swim lane diagram, if you guys are familiar with that. So it showed each of the themes, research, I think they call them research thrust or task groups across, each of them across the time frame, and just throw it out there like, well, what am I think I'm doing at a high level? What are our interim goals? 5 years, you have to break it down and get interim goals and interim sort of deliverable agreements, and then plan, maybe just in time planning. So I was trying to use consensus brainstorm to get that roadmap built. They all had to agree, yeah, this is where we're heading. It wasn't my plan or the lead PI's plan. Everybody had to agree. And then Knowledge Cafe, which is World Cafe. I called it Knowledge Cafe so that it wouldn't sound so woo-woo. Right? That's the other trick. Don't sound woo-woo.
I have a question.
And why?
What is woo-woo?
Yeah.
People in the United States say that about things like, or they used to when yoga was becoming big, or, people were sitting around in sweat lodges, woo-woo, like spiritual.
New age.
New age. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
Okay.
But these tools are so invaluable for example, I use Knowledge Cafe, introduce that to let's get out some creative ideas, and I'll go through what we were trying to look for and how we did it. Mind map, data gaps and dependencies. We even did role play, but see, remember, this one was a safe one, this consensus brainstorm. And then we built and then brought in as the team got more familiar with each other, got more familiar with me, started trusting that, yeah, these things, even though they seem at first glance a little bit scary, chaotic, can't see the end. They started getting trust and everything. Let's see, lightning talks. Those are quick talks, the 4-5 minute, maybe even less. I've heard of 1 minute lightning talks just for their status updates. And then the open market and storyboard, that's adapted from open space. So, and then retrospective, of course, just for after every one of these really large strategic planning meetings, what could we do better next time? So this is, just one example of the 1-2 table all to generate the annual planning. It's really, so the 1-2 table all, individuals reflect, then you share with a partner. This is important too. This is an important point because engineers and scientists, you've got a lot of people who are on the introvert on the scale, introvert extrovert scale. A lot of us can be kind of introverted. So, but then you've got the dominating people as any group. But this way, individuals reflect by themselves. They get their thoughts out. If they can share with just one other person, they get to talk. There's hopefully some way they can share their idea verbally. Then the table is building safety as you go along. And then this first year, they were starting to leave after they did this table. And I said, oh, and wait a second, come back. We haven't finished, and go this is a case where I broke the facilitators rule. I did actually demand that they do something. I had to, because they were all going to leave. Go to the board, put your cards up, and stand there and talk. And at first they weren't like this picture. They were all way back away from the board, and I said, all right, you got to get closer. You got to get closer to each other. It was interesting to watch. The second year, we just extended our use of this board. And so the second year, I hardly had to do anything. They loved it. They kind of took over. They knew exactly what to do. And that was the beauty of carrying it over, building on instead of introducing a totally new activity. And then, they needed to go ahead and really think through the 5 years and what's coming up, in year 3, what's the demand, what do I want to do? Also, though, what I did in year 2, I introduced Knowledge Cafe, World Cafe, and I was really lucky because we were in not California, we were in Florida on the Gulf Coast, in this beautiful setting. So I actually had a real pretty cafe, not French cafe style, but close as I could get it in where we were. And I used this this setting and this activity to encourage them or help them share ideas on what papers they could write together. So the tendency was, if you think about the scientists, the fisheries would write their papers for their fisheries journals. The engineers would write their paper for the Water Resources Journal. The GIS people would write their papers for their journal. But what we needed was everybody to come together, collaborate with this kind of project, and really think through and publish interdisciplinary papers. So that's how we used that. And when I'm this is what I do when I'm using this in a workshop. But I actually use this activity in a workshop to help workshop participants explore their comfort level with that, not knowing what's going to come out, because people tend to get a sense of in the project setting, a little bit of desperation, like, well, I've got to produce, so I got to skip this step. But it really, it's that chaos is where the creativity starts really coming out. And that's just the process I use, and I won't go into that in the workshop setting. Celeste, when you were there, I think we actually took a little bit longer than what I thought we could. That what I had, you guys asked me for a little bit more time, which I was really like honored to get that. But in a real meeting, you gotta allow plenty of time, really allow plenty of time, because people want to go deeper and they want to, it get energy builds. And so in a real meeting, as facilitators know, follow the flow of the energy. Sometimes I didn't have that much additional time. I don't think we have to go through the process now. I think you could make this available, David, to people, if that's okay with you guys. If I'm happy to.
Can we put it on the site? On the
Yeah,
members part of the, okay, thanks.
please. That's fine. I've actually wrote a book collecting all this, and I almost got it published, but then the publisher got back 3 yeses, 3 no's, and said, well, maybe it's not quite unique. And I'm like, I think it's very unique. So I'm probably just going to do it self-publish. But anyway, that will be available. If I hadn't taken on this other new job, I would have done it by now. Let's see. So the meeting the mid-project booster, Oh, so what I mean by that was, well, remember when I said there might be goal misalignment, or there's a lot of fatigue on there's a lot of fatigue on a lot of projects, but a big project where it's, maybe in mid-project, people start looking ahead, especially the researchers. They have to start thinking about their next project. And so you lose some of that momentum or that energy. And so we brought them all together and did a mind map. They did a mind map. And the question was, who do I need data from? Who can I give data to? Pretty much. And then it was obvious where the gaps were. And they did this, and it looks real messy. But at the end of this meeting, they actually kind of knew where they were going again. So simple things that are easy to get the group to engaged in. And I want to just, just reiterate, the value is not in that product and what the words on the flip chart. The value is in the discussion, the dialogue, and the conversation, when people were standing around the board and really talking through what they were discovering, right? So then I said we had some role play, and I wanted to kind of share this with y'all because I think it's so funny. It's really fun. So we needed, as a team, the project team needed to really understand some of the trade-offs. So if I make the Everglades wetter, what's going to happen? If I make the Everglades drier, what's going to happen? And there are a lot of, in any kind of big sort of thing like this, you've got people who need it really wet all the time, people need it really dry all the time, or somewhere in between. So a lot of competing interest, divergent needs. And so we practiced role playing as stakeholders, just to kind of get some policy scenarios developed so that we could test those out with the real stakeholders. And then they went further with real stakeholders, but I think this was to help them get more clear on kind of what their real role was in working with the stakeholders. So they did that. They looked at, it was interesting. We had several different groups, and the group that I facilitated was, there was a business owner who needed skinny alligators because there was an alligator wrestler who needed skinny alligators. There's a concerned citizen that, it was wet, so the deer died. We need to protect the animals, dry it out, and then, you know, the conservation areas, don't let them get as wet as they had been. But I like bringing this in because that stakeholder was actually a doctoral student, and she was so convincing that we don't know to this day whether she actually was an alligator wrestler or not. She was just so convincing. I hope I'm doing okay on time. So the fourth meeting, we introduced lightning talks, and you'll notice this is also an open space kind of agenda building exercise. I got kind of tired of working with the team and building the agendas the way they wanted to. So, you know, we could just do that at the meeting. So at the meeting, I set up a board and I said, you know, I gave them a little heads up, come prepared, and then you can decide where you fit on the program. And they really liked this a lot. So the lightning talks were real fast. We got through these status meetings really quickly. And I encouraged them, because a lot of scientists love to share everything they know there, you know, in that meeting, because they know a lot. It doesn't matter. Just give us the highlights. Your people will find you, or you can find your people, and dig deeper after this. By then they had trusted me and they had liked me, so they did it. And then the fifth one of these meetings, I actually used, this is another open space, kind of a open space conference technique. I called it open market and storyboard. And they were back on, okay, now we're getting into year, I guess maybe they had one more year to go. They really needed to buckle down and publish papers. I mean, that's their bread and butter. And so we used open space. I set it up where they did the consensus brainstorm, the 1-2 table all. Then they went out, they told each other, held up their big yellow sign and said, hey, this is the paper I'm interested in. They pasted it up on the storyboard, on the market board. Sorry, the marketplace. This would be the marketplace. They posted up on the marketplace. And then they looked around, they said, but this is overwhelming. There's no way we can write this many papers. We can publish this many papers. And I said, yeah, you won't be able to, but it doesn't matter. You have to have a sponsor to be able to publish any paper. So then the next step was, you know, take the colors pink and blue and put your initials on it. I suggested that they do this. So trying to be a good facilitator, suggested that they put their initials on the pink one if they wanted to be a sponsor, their initials on a blue if they wanted to contribute or collaborate on the paper. And I said, don't worry, you know, at the end, it's very well that you'll have a quantity of papers that you can manage. And they were surprised, you know, it took a couple of hours to get this, but they were surprised that I was right. They had targeted, I think they had capacity. They thought they had capacity for 12. And by the time they did all this, they ended up with about 12. So this is just the 1-2 table all. And then at the end of every meeting, we did a real simple retrospective. So the book I shared, the Agile Retrospectives, and you guys may incorporate, there are a lot of different ways and reasons to do retrospectives. I'm thinking about it in a real simple way. What do you love? What could be changed or added? And what are some good ideas? And then at the end of this, we would pick 1 or 2 things that we could commit to changing or working on in preparation for the next meeting. And then always celebrate whatever accomplishment we'd made. And this poster I put together because by then I had started realizing we had tons of conference papers, tons of presentations, tons of journal papers, and any, you know, theses, dissertations, book chapters. I mean, it was really wonderful to see it all in one big visual. They like that. So then at the end of every meeting, you know, this was pretty funny. It was like, okay, well, what are we doing now? So, you know, you had to refresh and restate what the next steps were. So for you guys, I'm almost finished. So I'll just get to these last 2 slides and I'll take any other questions you have. Okay. So my retrospective on this talk was, have I answered the why? Have I answered this question, why and how to incorporate activities? And I encourage you to help me understand if I have or not. Granted, this is just one project, one team, pretty big team, but anyway, why? It's really to just, again, overcome those challenges that you get with a team that we've had with COVID this whole year, for example. We need ways to encourage dialogue, support that, make things visible and support the transparency, who's doing what, and just that supporting that whole team cross interaction and helping people share their understanding of what they're doing. And then how my approach was really simple. And if you see, I when I say adapted, I truly mean that. There's books, there's a whole book on consensus brainstorm or World Cafe, and I preferred the simple things that weren't too intimidating, that could be used in this project environment and hopefully used by the principal investigators, the participants, through their other work. They're highly adaptable. And then, continuously reflecting on what we were doing and adapting for this particular group. And then the when, I think this is what you were also asking, Celeste. This is another good tool, because it made me think about, like, when do I really use these, or when would I like to use them? And it's by no means exhaustive, but if you see the activity, these are, I think, I went through all these activities. Agenda, I didn't talk about much, but I don't think you should ever start a meeting without an agenda of some type. And then these are, my rational aim was, I use this activity to what? Align, realign the team, create vision, or help re-examine the vision.
May
Okay.
I ask a question?
Go
Why
ahead.
you matrix for you, as you say? I was thinking to use this activity to answer this topic and all that. Did you also share these with with the group, or was it hidden in your activities when you were with them?
It was hidden, and to be honest, this is I could see why I was doing it, and I could explain it better after I did it, than during. But I knew some of these things, creating the vision. Well, yeah, some of them I did. Identify dependencies. Yeah, during consensus brainstorm, I actually made that clear. This is why we're doing this. We're interacting, and we've got to know who's talking to who needs data from whom. When can I get that to you? Can we still meet our interim deliverable out here? If, because everybody wanted to say, oh, that first year, everybody put all their cards kind of at the end, like, oh, I'll have this done by that. And so that first year was a real eye-opener of, well, you can't, because this person depends on your information. So in order for them to meet their goals, you have to move up. Everybody's like, well, I'm really busy. It's like, well, it won't get done if you don't. So yeah, to answer your question, Celeste, in some cases I did retrospective, inspect, and adapt. Yeah, I guess I did, but I didn't have this table then. I put the table together afterwards.
Okay. There's a question in the chat, if you wish to see it, because I think it's quite interesting here. As a facilitator, do you help the scientists to seal their agreements on papers? Is there any further facilitator support for execution, or they take the results from the meetings and figure out how to move forward on their own?
I think the latter for the most part, but in this particular case, I was really heavily involved with a lot of the monthly meetings, a lot of the check-ins, more as a, I don't know, in my world, I'd call it a project management role. I wasn't the project manager. In their world, it's principal investigator, but I was an assistant. And so I kind of kept guiding some of this or reminding them of certain things. I mean, I would build this after the meeting. I would help collect the decisions that had been made. I'd help build the roadmap and distribute it on 11 by 17 or something, so they had access to it. So for follow on, that's the kind of thing that I help do.
Thank you, Elise. We have another question here. Is when you talk about a couple of hours to iron out papers, contributors, and sponsors, I'm wondering how long the meeting was in total.
These were annual for the most part. A few of these were not annual meetings. These were 2-day meetings for the most part. So the start of the meeting, they would give their status updates, maybe get reconnected, and then do whatever we needed to do. So for Knowledge Cafe, you know, maybe that was on the first day to seed the idea of where are we going? What do we want to think about? And then over drinks or dinner, they'd talk more. And then the next day we do another session where they could firm ups, do a little bit more firming up. Does that get to the answer that you're looking for?
It's not my question, so if the person who asked the question has another question, I'll let you know. Excuse me, we have Jan. Jan wants to know, do you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
Well, you know what? I used to consider myself an extrovert, but I realized a true extrovert gets refreshed after being with people all day, gets refreshed by being with more people. So I have to say, yeah, my husband is a true extrovert. I'm kind of middle of the line where an introvert, you know, I'm in the middle where I can be extroverted, I can be in front of groups, I can work with people, but I liked, you know, at the end of the day, I really like my quiet time and read something all by myself. So I'm kind of halfway there. And there's a great book that helped me understand that. Are y'all familiar with Quiet? It's right here on my shelf by Susan Cain. It actually helped. Quiet is the name of it. It helped me understand because I have a mentor. I don't know. I don't think she made it, but she's truly an extrovert. And I probably used to drive her crazy with my middle of the road self, you know. And I asked her, how how do you manage? And so she sent me this book, and it helped me understand my daughter, who's a real scientist.
70% of the people are extroverted and only 25% of people are introverted. So there's a pressure on introverted to develop their extroversion. And it is usually a condition with facilitators. Most of them are introverted. But they thought they were extrovert.
Really? Most facilitators are introverted?
Yeah, introvert, yeah. Introverted, introverted. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
That's interesting. Yeah, thanks, Jan.
I have another question here. With such specialization among scientists or academics, was there a cultural reluctance to collaboration?
Cultural?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not sure. I don't think in this case. I don't know if I'd see that there. I'm not sure if cultural. What I found was it was more hierarchical reluctance. So there were this Knowledge Cafe, the first one that I did, that I introduced to the group. I said, okay, we're going to disperse, cross-pollination, you know, pick your groups. I'm not going to assign tables, but I want everybody to mix up and get with somebody else, like, you know. But what I saw was the lead PIs all went and sat at a table together because they had very important stuff to discuss. And the graduate students went to another table. This is just one example of what I saw. And I actually went and I broke them up and I took a graduate student. I said, okay, this won't work unless we mix and intermingle. And I broke up the lead PI group because they weren't going to get the cross-pollination they needed if they just kind of went from leaders to leaders to leaders, and the graduate students went from graduate student, graduate student, graduate student. What they really needed to do was the graduate students were, but I don't know if I've got anything really good to say. As you will be surprised. So I guess, yeah, that's more what I.
Can I just clarify my question? Actually, when I said cultural, I kind of meant within the community of the scientists, within their structures and organization. Like they weren't, and you've just defined it, they weren't used to collaborating within the hierarchy downwards or upwards. So yeah, that kind of answers it. Thank you.
Was it? Okay.
Thanks, Kevin. If anybody wants to ask a question themselves, you're not obliged to put it in the chat box. I'll ask it for you if you prefer to put it in the chat box, but if you want to jump in with a question, don't hesitate. I have another question here. I'm curious if you can share a moment of difficulty or breakdown in communication of sort.
Just one example? Nah, let me think about that for a second. A breakdown in communication. Well, I have a personal example. So I actually published these thoughts. You know, I actually led a paper on what we did, and it's in the Environmental Management Journal. Now, I was the only non-researcher on the paper, but it was my idea. The researchers kind of not poo-pooed. I shouldn't use that term. It wasn't very scientific, but I thought it was worth capturing the lessons learned from this project to share with other scientists. And I realized they only read, I mean, not they only, but their body of literature is published peer-reviewed journals. Like my body of literature I read is, you know, books and stuff from the business world. So it was a different, that I actually finally got. So I said I wanted to publish this paper. And this one researcher, Dr. Tanya Heikela, she loved the idea. She's a sociologist. She was on the team as one of our, I think she was called a sponsor or expert advisor. But during the writing of the paper was where I experienced the biggest kind of interesting breakdown of communication. And I was leading that. So I, you know, that was a challenge to me because what I had to do was, since I was the leader of the paper, of all these scientists or, you know, graduate students and scientists, I got a lot of support from some people, maybe not so much from others. But I really wanted to get it done. So the breakdown came in who thought it was really important, you know, getting pieces to each other, sharing knowledge. In the end, it's been a really successful paper, I'd say. But I don't know exactly like breakdown. If I could tell you, I had at one point in that one of the co-authors kind of tried to take over and become the lead author, because there's a lot of pressure in that world to be lead author. But I stood my ground. Kevin's like, but I'm not being real negative. I was just thinking, wow, there are a lot of drivers that drive people's actions, and I thought we were all like one big happy collaborative team effort. So that's a little teeny mini project within the bigger project, but that's probably the best example I can give y'all.
I have a question from Irene, who's thanking you for a great presentation, by the way. And I feel you will love this question. Just wondering if these sessions were online, or would you use the same tools and the same format or design?
They weren't online.
But if they were,
if they were,
if if they had been online, would you use the same tools and same format or design?
Well, I'm not that, as I've told you, David, I haven't had to do it online. So I don't particularly know, but one thing I do know is that I use the essence of the tools, but I never really quite use the exact same thing. So when I say Knowledge Cafe, the process at its essence was the same, but I might have tweaked it depending on what I knew the team wanted to get out of it. The same thing goes for the open market and storyboard. I only used that one really once, but you saw with lightning talks, I used open space to even just build the agenda for the lightning talk. So that's where I didn't have the same agenda design tool. Did that answer that question for Irene?
No more questions for
I
the
have
moment.
another. I was going to thank everybody. Appreciate the team. Appreciate you guys. I was going to share with y'all this last quote from Glenda Ewing, who writes about and teaches adaptive action. And I just love this. Leverage iterative learning into adaptive capacity to make sense of uncertainty and create the future. And this is a sunset that I took out Everglades National Park out on the Gulf.
Thank you. Would anybody have any questions? Anybody want to jump in with any questions to ask Alicia? Or does anybody have any of them experience themselves working with the scientific community that they would like to share maybe? It'd be interesting. I have a question here. Have you thought about teaching these methods to other scientists so they can collaborate better?
I have. That's why I'm actually, that's why I went to IAF in Milano and why I wrote the paper and have this book. I really think they're valuable. And I'd like to do the same thing with engineers. So I have a paper started for engineers, civil. And when I say engineers, it's the same thing. These groups that I'm getting involved in are, we've got different kinds of engineers who are civil, structural, planners, permitters. They're just, and I've used these tools with a lot of different people. And now I'm really confident in, even when somebody says, oh, woo-woo, I go like, no, just believe it and it'll work. But yeah, I'd like to, I think this is where my sweet spot is really.
Okay, perfect. Any other comments? Celeste, do you have anything to add?
Not specifically. I really enjoyed again listening to this project. Yeah, so I'm very grateful that you decided to join us today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, three things that stick in my mind. Well, four things. The value is in the discussion and not the words on the board. I thought that was very interesting. Simple comment is this won't work unless we mix. And I use the essence of the tools, but not exactly the way the tools are. And I think for the rest of the evening, that lady wrestling the skinny alligators will probably stay in my mind for most of the evening. Yeah.
Don't we have nightmares?
And beyond. And beyond. Yeah. Well, okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Alicia. If anybody has no questions, I think we can stop there. I think Celeste has just
feel free to email me. Sorry,
Celeste,
David. Feel free to email me if you have something.
You want to put in your email there right now in the chat so everybody can grab it there?
Okay, I have to stop sharing, right, or not?
Oh, I'll put it in if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll put in your email.
Yeah, well, I appreciate y'all's time and your time and interest, and Celeste for going through it twice.
Well, I took some pills before.
I-
I need to tell you that.
Did you what?
Okay, then perfect.
Well,
We can stop there. Yeah, and somebody wanted to say something? Okay, perfect. Well, then our next talk will be on May the 6th with Sam Brand, who will be talking about marketing visual facilitation. And over the next few days, the IAF EME will be making a little an announcement, which I think will please many. It's a members only event in a multi-part series, which I believe is worth the price of the IAF membership alone. So look forward to seeing you all very soon on May the 6th with Sam Brad, Marketing Visual Facilitation. Have a good evening.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. See you.
Ciao, Miguel.
Ciao, Celeste. Sorry for my sound problems at the very beginning. So it was a nightmare. Sorry.
No problem.
Thank you.
Glad you made
David.
it.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
You're welcome, Miguel. Okay.
So wonderful. We can stop recording, right?